Responsibility is not what others impose on you. It is what remains when you clearly see a situation and cannot pretend you don't. Welcome to another edition of the Budo Mind podcast. I'm Przemek Paleczny, a philosopher by training and a long-time martial artist. Here I examine the core concepts of Budo through the lens of philosophy to clarify their meaning and implications. In the previous episodes, I explained that compassion is not a feeling. It is the ability to see others from a distance, as they are, without projecting your own emotional states onto them. This distance enables understanding, and on that basis, respect, a form of behavior that allows the other person to grow according to their inner nature. In this way, the practical implications of the system become clear. Compassion is the condition of correct perception. Respect is the form of action. But one question remains: how do we know when to act? This brings us to the final concept, responsibility. As in the previous episodes, let's begin with what responsibility is not. The key distinction is between responsibility and duty. These two are often confused, but they are not the same. We can act out of duty without being responsible, and we can be responsible without acting out of duty. Duty is tied to social roles. A doctor has duties, a pilot has duties, a teacher has duties. These duties arise from social expectations. If they are not fulfilled, we say that someone has failed in their role. In this sense, duty is external. It does not require understanding. It only requires compliance. You follow the protocol. You do what is expected. Duties are also limited. They can be negotiated. They are often written into contracts. This is why codes of conduct often confuse responsibility with duty. They attempt to formalize responsibility as a fixed set of obligations. But this does not work. There are always situations that exceed what is written, and yet still demand action. A rule may prohibit an action in general, yet in specific circumstances, that same action may be expected or even required. The conclusion is this: duty does not guarantee correct action. Let us return to compassion. Compassion is the ability to see and understand others as they are, without projection. It is not a feeling, it is a cognitive condition. Responsibility is grounded in this condition. Compassion allows us to see the situation clearly, and that includes our relations to others and to the world. Responsibility emerges from these relations. For example, a sensei has to see their position clearly in relation with their students. If this relation is understood correctly, responsibility follows. This leads to a definition. Responsibility is the moment in which understanding commits you to action. Because compassion is not a feeling, responsibility is not a feeling either. It is a consequence of understanding. This raises a further question. What exactly in a situation commits us to act? This is where responsibility connects with respect. Respect, in my definition, is allowing others to grow according to their inner nature. So a situation creates responsibility when we see that someone's growth depends on our action. Let me use a simple example: a plant. If you own a plant, you are in a relation to it. That relation makes you responsible. To be responsible means to support its growth. With people, the structure is the same. We may stand in relations where we are mutually responsible, but the principle does not change. Responsibility means supporting the growth of what depends on us. A more complex case is a teacher and a student. The teacher is not responsible only for safety or protocol, but for recognizing what kind of support each student requires. This cannot be reduced to a fixed rule. It depends on correct perception. Responsibility does not eliminate uncertainty. It operates within it. Of course, not all situations are clear. Sometimes it is uncertain whether we should act at all. For example, we usually do not interfere in how others raise their children. But what if we see harm? What if a pregnant woman smokes? What if there is violence? What if a child lacks basic support? Should we intervene? I do not offer a code of conduct, because such situations are genuinely difficult. And responsibility does not remove this difficulty. It requires that we see it clearly, without imposing artificial certainty. This is the difference between rigid rules and conceptual models. The Ten Commandments define correct behavior, but reality often exceeds definition. Buddha's 5 precepts function differently. They are not absolute rules, but guiding structures, ideals that cannot be perfectly fulfilled. Sometimes even they must be broken. I am not proposing a contract. I am proposing a model, one that must be applied within uncertainty, through understanding rather than obedience. The first mistake is forced action. We often think responsibility means we must act, whether we want to or not. This is confusion with duty. Responsibility is not external pressure, it is internal recognition. The expectation is not that you follow a rule, but that you see the situation correctly. For example, we do not expect a father to fulfill a role mechanically. We expect him to care, because he understands his relation to his children. If responsibility is mistaken for duty, action becomes minimal and imprecise. A teacher who only follows protocol may ensure safety, but fail to support growth. Fast learners are held back, slow learners are not supported. The action is insufficient. To avoid this mistake, responsibility must come before duty. Understanding comes first, action follows. And sometimes responsibility goes beyond duty, or even against it. Henry David Thoreau is a classic example. The second mistake is avoidance. We see the situation, but we do not act. Instead, we rationalize. We explain to ourselves why action was not necessary, and this creates a pattern. The more we repeat it, the more convincing the explanation becomes. For example, you skip training. You say you had too much work. Next time it becomes easier to repeat. The story stabilizes. Here is the key point. Compassion is clear seeing. Avoidance distorts that clarity, and repeated avoidance makes correct perception increasingly difficult. As a result, it becomes easier to ignore responsibility altogether. Responsibility is the moment in which your understanding commits you to action. For example, choosing the martial path creates a situation. If you see it clearly, you recognize what it demands. Consistent practice. That recognition is responsibility. This applies not only to yourself, but also to others. Training partners, for instance. If you understand your relation to them, you recognize the need to act with care. Every responsibility has 2 elements: correct recognition and commitment to action. Responsibility is not purely subjective. Others can also recognize it. This means you can fail to see your responsibility even when it exists. But once you truly recognize it, you cannot withdraw from it. You may fail to act, but you cannot unknow what you have already seen. Responsibility is not imposed. It is what remains when you stop forcing action and you stop avoiding it and simply see the situation as it is. Now let's place responsibility within the system. The foundation is zanshin, a state of awareness that allows you to stop and see clearly. It separates you from impulsive reaction. Your mental states become objects of observation, not commands. This enables self-control. You act not from impulse, but in relation to the situation. Discipline stabilizes this over time. These three, zanshin, self-control, discipline, form the foundation. Then comes the practical layer. Zanshin enables compassion. Compassion allows correct perception. From that perception, responsibility emerges. And responsibility leads to the question, how should we act? This is where respect comes in. Respect is action that maintains proper distance and allows others to grow. Sometimes this means not interfering. Sometimes it means active support. But in every case, action must be grounded in compassion and responsibility. This was the Budo Mind podcast. In this episode, I examined the concept of responsibility. Responsibility is not duty. Duty is external, limited, and imposed. Responsibility emerges from understanding. It is what remains when we see clearly, without forcing ourselves and without making excuses. With this, the system is complete at its basic level. Zanshin, self-control and discipline form its foundation. Compassion, responsibility and respect form its application. In the next episode, I will examine the concept of door, the path, and show how this entire system operates over time. Thank you for listening.